You ready for the other half of it? The previous president, President Byron. So you don't want to hear the full story. You don't want to hear the full story. I have a better question. Is it okay to know that we have more than 300 people who are over the age of 100 who are still active? Is that okay? That's
Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look and listen to Representative Donalds talking about Social Security. Now, the question that's asked of him is, do you approve of DOJ invading Social Security files?
I'm sorry? No, I don't. Oh, you know what? Then I might come back to the question later. It may or may not be.
Ask the question.
What? Do you approve of Elon and DOJ invading our Social Security files?
Elon Musk and DOJ have been authorized by the President of the United States.
Okay, so he's not answering the question right off the bat. The question was, do you approve of Elon Musk's DOJ invading Social Security files? And now he goes to the president, has given DOJ the authority to do what they're doing.
Don't leave. Are you ready?
You ready for the other half of it? The previous president, President Byron. So you don't want to hear the full story. You don't want to hear the full story. Allow me to educate and bring you the full story. And when you're ready, I'm going to tell you, because I don't want you to yell and not hear the full story. Because you're not listening. You're yelling. Here we go. I'm going to tell you the full story. Here's the full story. The previous administration, Joe Biden, he authorized 53 students to have access to the same database during his administration. 53. He authorized 53 students to have access to the Social Security database. And I didn't hear anybody being upset when Joe Biden authorized that. So how can you be upset when it's that versus Elon Musk? That is not.
Okay, so I did a little research, didn't have to go very far, but I'll show you the research that I was able to uncover here. We'll pull it up. And this is coming from Breitbart News. Okay, so here's the article, and this was linked to a post that Donalds put out on Facebook. And it says, Joe Biden gave 53 researchers, student volunteers access to IRS data. So we're talking about IRS data here. Okay, and what's interesting is the question was about Social Security. And so why would he go to IRS data when we're talking about Social Security? And so I found that odd. But to even go a step further, when it comes to researchers, yes, we do allow researchers access to certain government agencies at times because that's what they're doing. They're doing research papers and things like that, and they're trying to gather information. But that's a little bit different than having DOJ come in, and not only, they're not doing research, they're actually investigating and trying to find the waste, fraud, and abuse, which is okay, but they're disrupting the agencies as they're doing it. So when you have situations where computer systems are going down, where you have situations where doors are being locked so people, government employees don't have access to their own office anymore, that's a problem. And I think that people are showing their frustration because, one, you ask a question about Social Security, about invading Social Security files, and then instead of answering the question, Representative Donalds goes off and asks another question about, well, do you agree with Joe Biden giving 53 researchers access, students access to files? And he goes on, he says Social Security files, when the reality is this is IRS data, okay? So it's very interesting, and the audience is very upset, obviously, and they continue to boo him, and we'll continue to, I'll play the rest of the clip. But You can't, if you are going to a town hall, you're a representative going to a town hall, and we're seeing this all over the U.S. right now, where we have politicians going to these town halls, and they're getting a rude awakening because people are fed up. They're upset. They didn't want all of this. And when it comes to Congress, that's Congress's job. Congress's job is to investigate. They investigate these agencies. And they have a lot of sway when it comes to their investigations. Why? Because they have this. They have the money. And they can determine how much money is going to all these different agencies. The easiest way to find waste, fraud, and abuse within Social Security and all these different agencies that are out there is to simply say this. All Congress needs to do is say, look, we want you to find the waste, fraud, and abuse that's in your agency. And if you don't find that waste, fraud, and abuse, this $15 billion that we have that we will allocate to your agency for the year, we're not going to do that. We're going to put that on hold until you find this waste, fraud, and abuse. And then you have the heads of these agencies come back in front of a hearing, and then you question them. That's Congress's job. Now, when you add another layer, when you add DOJ in there, now you have a private company that's coming in, and they're getting access to these documents, and they're actually moving on some of this stuff. And this is without congressional approval. That's the problem. And some of these politicians, they're just not understanding that. They're not getting that. But that's what people are upset about. They're upset about the fact that, look, you have this outside agency coming in, no oversight. That's the big problem. There's no oversight. At least the American people have oversight over Congress. We can vote people in, we can vote people out. But when it comes to DOJ, who's looking at DOJ? What if they make mistakes? Who holds them accountable? And I know the situation is going to go like this. If DOJ makes a mistake, let's say there's some waste, fraud, and abuse that they're not able to uncover, and we don't find out until a couple years down the road we find out that this has been going on and DOJ didn't catch it. Well, are we going to hold DOJ accountable? How do we hold DOJ accountable? And they'll say, well, we'll go to the president. We'll hold the president accountable. And the president's just going to say, well, you know what? I hired these people, but it's up to Congress to actually investigate this stuff. And so then we'll just be going in a circle. And that's the fear. That's what we don't want to happen. That's why you have elected representatives that should be looking into this waste, fraud, and abuse and taking care of this. We don't need DOJ. We have Congress. If Congress was doing their job, then we wouldn't have to have these outside agencies coming in talking about they want to save the American people money.
Sure, okay. If you're going to have a conversation about policy, then answer the question. Chance is not going to answer the question. Donald Trump authorized Elon Musk to have access. I agree with that.
Okay, so he finally answered it. I agree with that. President Trump gave DOJ access. I agree with that. So he answered the question, but he had to get around to answering that question.
Do you know who else agrees with it? Joe Biden. Because Joe Biden gave similar access to 53 students during his administration.
And it should be important to note, Joe Biden is not president anymore. And this could be one of the reasons why he's not president anymore. So to go back and say, well, Joe Biden agreed with it, and I agree with it, do you really want to say that?
This is my question for the audience. Do you want to yell or do you want to hear? Because if you want to hear, I'm trying to give you information. I told you, I'm going to be factual. But you can yell or you can hear. The truth is, Joe Biden gave similar access to the same database during his administration to students. So it's okay then, but it's not okay now. Or the people who are upset with Elon Musk, was it okay when 53 students had the same access to the Social Security database? Was it okay then? But he did that. Okay. I got a better question. Is it okay to know that we have more than 300 people who are over the age of 100 who are still active in the Social Security database? Is that okay? That's okay. Is it okay? Is it okay if And we won't do the necessary checks to make sure that the people who are getting the Social Security checks, seniors who paid into the program, are actually getting the dollars that they deserve, free from fraud-based corruption. Is that okay? Because I think that's okay. I think that's okay. And if you don't think that's okay, then now...
And that is okay. I don't think that's the argument. They're not upset that they're looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. They're upset with the fact that Congress is doing nothing. And there's no oversight over Doge. That's what people are upset about. If that information were to leak into the wrong hands, and let's say Doge had the information that leaks into the wrong hands, how do we hold them accountable? How do we hold them accountable? Are there checks and balances that are within Doge that's going to hold them accountable? Do they have a chain of custody? That's a big thing. Any government agency, you have a chain of custody. I work for a government agency. We had a chain of custody. Everybody needs to sign off. So anytime something, we have a document that passes from one hand to the next, they're signing off on that information. Why? Because if it ends up coming up missing, then we'll just go right back to that chain of custody and we'll be able to figure out who had it last. Are they doing the same thing with Doge? Is Doge being required to do stuff like that? Now, I don't know the answer to that, but maybe if there was more transparency, we would know, okay, Doge is, they have this chain of custody. So we know that.
You're playing politics. You're not being factual. No, not yet. Let me go. If you do not believe that it is okay, if you think it is fine for people to defraud Social Security, you and I don't do it. What the Doge is doing is they are examining the records. They are providing their findings. Congress has to weigh in on those findings. That's the way the process works.
And that's not the way the process works, but I would even say that's okay. If you have an outside agency looking into waste, fraud, and abuse, that's okay. However, Congress does need to act on this. We shouldn't see doors being locked. We shouldn't see people being told that emails being sent out by Doge telling government employees that not to return to work or giving them the option to retire early. We shouldn't be getting that information from Doge. That should be coming from a government agency. Congress does need to weigh in on this. Absolutely. And he's right by saying that, but the action should be coming from Congress, not coming from Doge. They should not be physically telling people not to go to work and locking doors and laying people off. And that's all they're saying here, and that's why they're upset. They're not upset with the fact that you have an outside agency looking into this information, but they want to be able to hold that outside agency accountable, and then they want Congress to do their job.
They're not upset because Donald Trump has Elon Musk doing it. That doesn't make any sense. We have to make sense. We have to agree on certain things. All right.
What did you do?
No. It's all right. Sir, I understand computers quite well. Sir, relax. Sir, the question was asked and I made my statement. Are you asking? I made my statement. It is not okay. Hold on, no, sit. Don't sit. It is not okay. It is not okay to know that there is fraudulent activity in the Social Security Administration and do nothing. That is not okay.
And once again, they understand that. And maybe this is a good discussion to have. When it comes to representatives, when it comes to Congress people in general, it comes to politicians in general, what is their role? Why are you here? You're here to protect the American people. And you have people who vote for you, and you're there to represent them. And if they're in a situation where they don't feel that they're being represented, that they're being protected, that's on you. And Representative Donalds doesn't get that. He's just saying, well, look, the president said it was okay, and Doge is going in there, and they're looking and they're finding waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, the American people aren't okay with that, or at least in this group of people, they're not okay with that. So what are you going to do to rectify that? Because they don't have to be there. Doge doesn't have to be there is what I'm trying to explain. You have Congress people. They hold hearings. They can bring in all the heads of these different agencies. They can say, look, you need to find the wage fraud and abuse. And I think that's what some people are saying in the audience. They're like, look, we don't need Doge. We need you to do your job.
It's not okay. You have a responsibility to taxpayer dollars, and we are going to take that responsibility. It is also, let's be intellectually honest, it is also not, it is intellectually dishonest to be upset with Elon Musk, but not be upset with the 53 students who had similar access under the Biden administration. And if you want to play with me, I can't help you.
Ask them to just, we don't mind their free speech, but for the people that want to hear, like, we can't hear.
Okay, so that was the end there. I think I talked enough, so I'm not going to continue to talk, but I want to know how you guys feel about this whole situation. And we're going to see more of this. People are upset. They're very upset. And they're very scared when it comes to Social Security because they know that you've had politicians in the past talk about cutting Social Security. And right now we are seeing agencies being cut. So the administrative side of agencies being cut, the funding is being cut. They're laying people off, things like that. We're seeing that happen. And then you saw in the end, Representative Donalds going back to, well, 53 students had access to data, the same data, or it wasn't really the same, it was IRS data, but nonetheless, they had access, and so Doge has the same access or similar access is what he's saying. But what did those researchers do? That's a question you have to ask yourself, and that was back in 2023. What did they do? Did we see doors being locked? Did we see people being laid off? Did we see emails going out telling people not to show up to work? Did we see that with the researchers? That's what people are upset about. They're upset about how this is being handled. Not really necessarily the access, but what they're doing with the access. That's where the outrage is coming from. And so I want to know what you guys think about this, so let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.